no offense to your client, if I got that email, I'd be like, I'm not hiring you, because that sounds miserable, right? It is amazing to me the amount of times where it's like, hey Jay, I know that you emailed me 6 times and never replied. I've emailed you now, and you need to get back to me in 15 minutes because I have emailed you. Forget when you emailed me. So if I was paying a law firm any amount of money and they told me, hey, it's 3 days minimum before we're getting back to you, I would go elsewhere.
All right. What do you get when you combine the insights of a seasoned personal injury lawyer? You take the skills and knowledge of a coach and then the acute insights of a marketer. But you combine that and you get Jordan Ostroff, folks. Now, Jordan and I have been friends for a very long time, and recently we were having a casual conversation just discussing proper email management techniques for lawyers and the ways that they can run better practices and create a choreographed experience for their clients. And what we realized is that we wanted to try something new. So mid-conversation, what we did is we hit the record button so that you all can sit in and listen to this conversation as a fly on the wall. This is a new format for me, so I'm definitely looking for some feedback on this, but I certainly think there was a lot of value here. So without further ado, here is that conversation.
All right. So Jordan, this is it's a big topic. A lot of attorneys are wondering, how do they just get through the mountains of email and communications and clients who want status updates? I've got a secret on my end, and it's more technology related. So, just for the people who don't know me, my name is Jay McAllister. I run a company called Paragon Tech. We've been in business for about a decade and a half. Our entire focus is just on helping attorneys to leverage the best technology so that they go from low tech and busy to high tech and productive. So we just make that process as seamless as possible. How about you, Jordan? Let the people know.
Dude, a decade and a half? That's amazing. Were you like 10 when it child labor?
9 if you don't. I don't know if you're using the Gregorian calendar or not, but
There we go.
On that, yeah, you could kind of skew it either way.
Too funny. So I come to this from the opposite perspective as the lawyer side, and then realizing how miserable it is or can be when you don't do anything intentionally. And so like I was I wouldn't say lucky enough to have like an existential breakdown where I reassessed everything in my life, rebuilt my firm from the ground up, and then now since then have been trying to help more people do the same thing, hopefully without the existential breakdown, because it is so much better when you do all this stuff intentionally, to the extent that now I coach other CEOs on how to own a business you can be proud of and live a life that's even better.
Okay. So, and speaking of existential crisis, I just happen to notice, and I can't let this one slide, we both have Infinity Gauntlets behind us. So, I've got mine over there. You've got a real version over there. Is that Lego?
It's Lego, yeah. Okay. My 6-year-old well, I guess he was like 4 at the time. It's like the first like real Lego set he put together. It was super cool.
Let's explore some of these things from our perspectives. I'd like to know for you, specifically as an attorney, what are the typically, let's start with the base problem and define that. Now, I think a lot of times the problem is, as busy lawyers go throughout their day, their inbox fills up from morning to noon to afternoon to evening. It's constantly, a deluge of emails coming in, and it's usually from clients or vendors. And, there's just so much noise.
Well, and opposing counsels and the court e-filings and spam, dozens and dozens of emails a day trying to sell services through email.
Yeah, and I'd imagine, most of those are things that don't necessarily need attention right there and then in that moment. Some things do. So what are the things that you typically see when you're working with, the busy professionals that you do? What are they typically struggling with, and how does it present itself in the day-to-day?
So, that meme from Game of Thrones where it's Jon Snow facing Ramsay Bolton's army right before the Knights of the Vale come rushing in, and it's like they're all charging at him and he just like has his one sword? That's what email is like. Or yeah, they are the email, you are the Jon Snow trying to head it off, because email is a to-do list that you don't control. So basically every email is like, hey Jay, here's another task for you to do. Here's another thing for you to do, Jay. Jay, I also want you to do this, but from like the entire world sending it to you.
I never thought of it that way. A to-do list that you don't control, and also that has specific time constraints around it that you have no input on either. So it's like not only the task list, but also the manner and the cadence in which you have to perform those tasks. It's fascinating. I can imagine as Jon Snow, some of us might feel that way with the one sword, because we do really have that one tool that we can use to conquer it, which is our mailbox, right? And just the tools that are built in. So let me ask you this, because typically what I see, and when I'm working with my clients, a lot of times what I'm hearing is that there's all of this extraneous noise, and there are various methods you can try. You can, time blocking, there's so many frameworks that you can use in order to kind of get your hands around this problem. But one of the main things I've seen, as a matter of fact, I have a client there in Virginia Beach, and whenever you email anyone in the firm, you get an automated response every single time that says, please do not expect a response for at minimum 72 hours. And only then, if 72 hours has elapsed, can you resubmit an email. Otherwise, please do not resubmit. And obviously they do know it's a problem, but it was just a matter of like, they just are prioritizing and triaging for the things that are most important, which is obviously, making sure they're not missing filing deadlines, communicating with clients who call in over the phone. So email kind of became the last component that we'll get to it if we can. Is that something that you see as well, or how does that manifest for you?
Not that bad. Because like, no offense to your client, if I got that email, I'd be like, I'm not hiring you. Because that sounds miserable, right? It is amazing to me the amount of times where it's like, hey Jay, I know that you emailed me 6 times and never replied. I've emailed you now, and you need to get back to me in 15 minutes because I have emailed you. Forget when you emailed me. So if I was paying a law firm any amount of money and they told me, hey, it's 3 days minimum before we're getting back to you, I would go elsewhere. And even from what you're saying, then frame the auto response that way. Hey, listen, the worst thing that you would experience is when you are in our office and we can't pay attention because we are addressing emails as quickly as possible. So we are asking for the same grace from you with your email that we are going to give you when we are talking to you in the office or on the phone or whatever. We want to be able to put you first when we're there, when we can, whatever. Like then, tweak the messaging.
So I'd like to know from your perspective, email, we're talking about this very doom and gloom as if email is a problem, right? And for the base of email is it allows more efficient communication. That's the base concept there. It allows you to communicate information in a structured format. You have a documented, paper trail, so to speak. So that way, a client can't accuse you of saying this. You can't accuse the client of saying something that they didn't say. This keeps everything confined and in one space, so that's easy to refer back to. Right. I have a client when they go to create their discovery resolution letters. So they actually go through their entire email correspondence to see what was said between them and the opposing counsel. And they want to just put together a story, what discovery items are requested, interrogatories, what the responses were. They document all that. And then they have to put that, that ultimately becomes their motion to compel. They use that to draft it. So obviously email has a utility that's quite high. But from your perspective, what do you think? Like, I want to know from the lawyer's perspective, how do you contextualize and prioritize email during the day to make sure that it actually can be used for a useful purpose and doesn't become something that actually detracts from the value that lawyers are able to deliver to their clients?
It's a great question. I mean, look, here's the thing. There is no one right answer. It is developing the right framework, right? Because I guess, let me rephrase, the easy answer. Just delete every email that comes in. If it's that important, somebody will send it again, right? Like that's probably the easy answer, but that's not realistic, especially because like the number 2 reason lawyers get punished is bad communication with clients. So if you don't steal their money and you respond to their emails, you have like a 90-something% chance of not having an issue. So you have to figure out the right framework. And so like I've got a specific like email system that I work with my clients on that I'm happy to share, but ultimately like at the top level, I'm just following the Eisenhower matrix. Like from Dwight Eisenhower, this sat on his desk. It's 4 quadrants. It's do, defer, delegate, and drop. And like that is the core of my really task management system, but certainly for email.
So does that find its way? I know in the past we've talked and you actually shared an email framework that you used when you were running your firm, and maybe you still use it today. You shared a framework in which there was explicit directions that you would give to an individual who'd be handling your inbox for you on your behalf. And there are specific instructions that related to your schedule and your preferences and your scheduling availability and all of these contextual areas that you would use to then for that person to decide on how to properly manage your email communication. So is that something that you still find is useful today?
1000%. Yes. I think it's every day it is more important because every day there are more emails sent. So anything that you can do to weed through the noise of email and find the signal of the legitimate emails is that much more important going forward until we just get AI to completely control our email. But as of right now, ChatGPT, it can sort of do it, but not perfectly.
Okay. I might blow your mind then with something I'm going to say next.
Okay.
And, this is something that so, you mentioned ChatGPT. Some people are familiar with Copilot. These are all tools that can be used they're large language models. So you can input information. You have an email that comes in, you copy and paste it, you drop it in. You can try to come up with an appropriate response. But again, they're lacking context about you and an individual. They're lacking context on like all the things we just talked about, your preferences or your law firm's billing model. What are your hourly rates? What are common milestones within your matters that you can use to update clients? So these tools lack all of that context. So what I actually sought out to do about a year ago is, because this email problem is so ubiquitous and so many lawyers struggle with this just inaccurate representation of them as an attorney. People think that they as a lawyer are operating at a subpar level just due to the fact that their communication isn't as frequent as they would like. And this is just a negative stigma that's a reality of the profession. And I wanted to see if there's something we could do about it. So we went through a ton of tools and testing to see what was out there, what we could adapt to the legal profession. And we actually found something called MailMaestro. I don't know if you've heard of it before, but this tool, it initially was not designed for the legal profession, but it was good enough where we could use it. And I'll tell you a little bit about how it works, but it was good enough that we could use it, understand how it works. I actually then reached out to the CEO of the company and gave them a bunch of feedback of things that I think lawyers would be able to find value if the tool could do. So over the last year, they've actually incorporated a lot of that stuff into the offering.
Hey,
and now
awesome.
It's really good. So there were some requirements, some base level requirements that I knew it had to be able to do in order to be effective for attorneys. One is it had to work natively within the tools that attorneys are using. So namely Outlook and Google Workspace, the Gmail inbox. It's got to work within those, because no lawyer that I know, I'm a technologist at heart. We implement a lot of technology for lawyers. If it's not simple, easy to use, and familiar, they won't use it, right? So it doesn't matter how good it is, it will never stick. It'll never catch on. So it had to work within the email inbox.
I don't think anybody wakes up in the morning and goes, you know what I could really use in my life? Another app, another login, another password, another program, another subscription. Like nobody, if there is somebody out there who does that, like please shoot me a message, because I really want to talk to you and find out why.
No one likes new tools, especially when you put that specific lens of an attorney. It's just, there's already too much going on and there's already too many systems that are in play. So it's got to work within the default mailbox. It also has to be able to understand context about that person. Again, billing styles, all of the variables that you would use in order to craft an appropriate response, got to be able to understand that. And then thirdly, security. It has to be done in a secure fashion so that you don't muddy the waters and create this opportunity for client data to leak out of the firm. And then lastly, if it's used properly, it's very easy to be able to get up to speed and understand how to use it without a huge learning curve. So I figured if it could do those four things, then we'd be in pretty good shape. So, this particular tool, MailMaestro, it does that with an added benefit that I did not realize needed to be accounted for in the beginning, is that the attorney ultimately needs to have full control over the messaging that gets sent out, right? So we're not looking for automated systems that handle your entire inbox without you having the fine-tuned control to be able to craft the messaging and give it that final seal of approval before it goes out. So yeah, it accomplishes all of those things. Imagine it like this. You have all these emails that come in on a day-to-day basis. Imagine if all of those had a response drafted for you, so that all you had to do was go in and then just approve or modify the responses slightly, right? One of the things they don't teach in law school, you can give context on this, is, done is better than perfect. So, from talking to a lot of my colleagues and lawyers, they spend so much time, trying to craft the perfect text message or the perfect funnel or the perfect landing page, and they send it out to their colleagues for revisions and input. And a lot of times the better method is just to put it out in the wild, get data, and then iterate it on it quickly. You have to have a feedback loop to be able to iterate on it, but a lot of times that's a much more effective approach rather than trying to craft it. And that's the same way this works, right? So, you have these drafts you have these drafts that are created on your behalf, and you would load in preliminarily. What it does, it'll scan your email inbox, see how you respond, common phrases that you use. They'll load all of that into its context, and then it uses that in order to inform its responses. And over time, it gets better as you send out more emails and you refine, and you just go in and you modify the details slightly. So what I find for me particularly is, I would say about 80% of my emails are able to be sent out without any modifications. And then there are some of those very nuanced emails where maybe someone's asking about particular things that are particular to their situation or their matter in this case, right? And then that would be what you would modify, but it'll leave space in there for you to be able to capture that information. So I would definitely recommend that. It's one of the things that I forget the statistics. Clio did a report on this a couple of years ago. I think they said lawyers spend up to 30% of their day in their email inbox, right? So you're talking, between 2 to 3 hours for some lawyers,
which is more than they bill on average.
Yeah. So that's kind of there's certainly no silver bullets. There's not like one thing that will completely eliminate this problem of communications and needing to get back to clients in a reasonable time frame. That ultimately is what I believe is the key, to just layer as many of those on as possible.
Yeah, I'd also add being proactive about the communication. I think that's the other thing that we don't talk about. Like when we talk about email management, we talk about dealing with what's already in, but I think we need to go that step farther. Because like, in my opinion, the greatest invention in the world of communication is the Domino's pizza tracker. Because you're laughing. It's true. Because like at this point, there's an app. You hit a button, you get a pizza in like 25, 30 minutes. But Domino's was like, that's too long. People will ask, where's their pizza? So they put together this whole thing where it's like, we are putting it together. It is being reviewed. It's going in the oven. It's coming out of the oven. It's out for delivery. It's at your door. Like in a 25-minute thing, there are 5, I think, different stages. I might be wrong in the Domino's pizza tracker stages, but like for 25 minutes of ordering a pizza, you instead have a client who has invested their car accident future in you, who has invested, $5,000 in an estate plan, who has invested all of this in you, and like 5 emails automatically sent of those stages can save so many emails just to let them know, like, hey, you're in treatment phase, we're getting the medical records, we are doing pre-suit negotiations, we're putting together a demand letter, we are filing suit, whatever those common stages are, just having those go out automatically. If MailMaestro does it, MailChimp, Lawmatics, your case management, whatever, that saves so many emails because now clients know they have a cadence of communication. And so that's cuts down on some, it does not cut down on all of the what's going on with my case. What's the next step? What are we waiting on? What do we have to do? And all those other things. So
agreed.
Yes to everything you said.
And I think the big part there is that the pizza is still being delivered in 25 minutes. We didn't change that, but what we've changed is the perception of speed, just by giving frequent updates and letting the person know what stage we came from, what stage we're in now, and then what comes next. Most importantly, I think that translates. That's such a perfect metaphor to how a law firm should operate ideally, to give that client a consistent experience. They should know exactly what stage they're in. They should never be in limbo and just waiting on their attorney to call, because that's when they ultimately decide, it's been a week and I haven't heard anything and I'm not sure what's going on now. I'm going to call in. And now that's one more email or one more phone call And of course, you were busy with some focused work, and now you have this task switch, which takes even more efficiency out of that attorney's overall capacity for the day.
Yes, 1,000%.
So what do you think about, when we talk about cadences? It's interesting that you brought that up, because this is something that I've been fairly diligent on training my clients to do better, which is setting up cadences, setting up milestones within their matters, and using those in order to at least create a structure for communication. Like, even if you're not there yet where you're ready to automate that fully, because again, so many lawyers, they really crave that control over the communications and how the messages are sent and received to their clients. So, what do you typically recommend? I'd like to know from the lawyer mindset, how do you fight this propensity to want to stray away from, this idea that every matter has to be handled in a bespoke way, and that somehow by creating process and milestones and frameworks, somehow that devalues the work that the lawyer's doing? How do you respond to that and combat that?
The greatest combination of art and hard repeatability automation factory work is Andy Warhol. Like, legitimately, his group was called The Factory. He had all these SOPs on how other people could paint his paintings or put it together for him to paint or whatever. Like, if you really want to see a way around this, or how little people care, look into Andy Warhol, because he had this system for genuine art. And look, I get that there are parts of litigation, there are parts of your strategy that are going to be bespoke. I get that. I'm not telling you not to do that. I'm not telling you to take a case. I'm telling you that in that situation, you have 35 different causes of actions you have ever filed. So if you have a checklist for which ones apply, you can have a paralegal put together which checklist they think apply here and attach the documents required, or do a template, or put it together in a demand letter already for you, and then you can go through and edit it. If you find yourself arguing similar types of cases, you have the same case law. So having those cases, printed out and pre-highlighted on those issues, ready to go in a Google Doc, whatever, like, you can standardize as much of this as you feel like you can standardize. I promise you it's more than you already have standardized, which then gives you more time to actually think about having a unique argument, to really focus on the delivery of a brand new closing for this client, to spend an extra 5 minutes with them explaining what's going on, because you're not being pulled to 10,000 emails, because you're not writing all your contracts from scratch, because you're not having to drive down the street to some law library to look up the most recent cases. Like, there's an opportunity where you use this to be more unique and amazing.
Agreed, right? So many think that by systemizing and standardizing your operations, that you're somehow creating the McDonald's and you're just commoditizing your work. But really, like you mentioned so succinctly, you're creating the capacity for you to create more. You're cooking more filet mignons because you have the time to be able to invest in this high quality product. You're not getting stuck in the nuances and the minutia, that ultimately needs to be done to move the cases forward, but doesn't necessarily require a big lawyer brain to do so.
Well, and the wild thing to me is, like, so you mentioned McDonald's, and so McDonald's gets this bad rap, deserved or undeserved, I don't know. But from this standpoint, like, so try to start the next McDonald's. If it's that simple because it's so repeatable, try and do it. Because, like, the difference between McDonald's and Burger King, the food is comparable. I get that part. But, like, McDonald's as a company,
There's a lot of people who might disagree with that statement, so you really gotta
sure,
be
but, like,
sensitive to the,
if you genuinely look at the numbers, McDonald's is doing more than, like, Burger King and Wendy's and Chick-fil-A put together. Like, it is not close, because they have those systems, because they have standardized it to so much extent. Like, as lawyers, we sit here and we say that this is a, like, flippant thing that's easy to do. I'm telling you, no, it's actually easier to do everything from scratch. It is harder to sit down and standardize. There are a lot more law firms, solo and small and medium-sized law firms, than there are franchise chain restaurants operating with any sort of profitability, because it's harder to standardize some of this stuff.
Absolutely. A lot of times that is where the value lies. It's in the simplicity. It's being able to distill this complex end result into as few simplified steps as possible. So we brought up Jeff Bezos and Amazon before. I mean, what a simple business model. Just, offer consumer goods and get it to people in a short amount of time. It's super simple, right?
Dude,
And
take it a step farther.
that's where the power is though, right? Because when you look at the operations, like, do you know what's involved in the back end to make sure that that item can show up at your door same day? Like the complexity that has to happen, the predictive analysis where they figure out, I'm in Chicago, this is the first day that snowed for the year today, right? For them to figure out, okay, it's going to snow, it's in November, and Jay's probably going to order a shovel. So I'm going to make sure we divert all of our stock. We're going to put it in a warehouse right by Jay's house so that when he goes to order that shovel on Tuesday, we already know he's going to do it. We're able to get it to him the same day. Like, but all the logistics that have to happen between manufacturing and warehousing and distribution and last mile, like it's just insane. And that's where the value really lies. But I think you want to take it further, right?
Yeah. And Amazon has a patent on one-click ordering. Flat out. So like when you
really?
Yes. So when you one-click order on iTunes, they license the patent from Amazon. Amazon and Walmart got into a whole big fight over this. I don't know how you patent one-click ordering, but they have it. Somehow it got resolved. I don't know. Maybe for Walmart, it's two-click ordering. Maybe there was a carve-out. I have no idea. But like genuinely, they have the power to allow easiest customer-focused use service. One button, it's on its way that other people technically can't do.
That is insane, right? Talk about being able to completely create an entire industry and center it around this idea that's so simple that you would think it's not able to be patented, but apparently it is. You just taught me something today. Didn't know.
Yeah. Well, and then like from the iTunes side or the burning a disc, like you just remember when we used to do burn CDs, you just dragged them in. Like before that,
yeah. I was a Nero guy.
Okay, so like click 12 buttons, organize them, do this, put the disc in, and then, Steve Jobs was like, why can't you just drag it to the thing and have it right? Like making things simpler is part of what has made these companies, buku trillions. I'm not telling you if you make your law firm that simple, it's going to be a $1 trillion industry. But I'm telling you that if I am sitting here deciding between two estate plans and you have the opportunity for me to do e-filing or e-signing my contract and submitting my forms online and going through this stuff, and the other person makes me print something out and fill it out by hand and fax it back, I know who I'm hiring.
So would you say it's a fair argument to make that automation and systems and efficient email management are not for everyone? They're not for every attorney. They're not for every law firm. They're only for those who are looking to create, one, a consistent, repeatable process that allows them to derive high-value clients and to create something that is no longer a job for them, but allows them to plug in their skill set and create value for others without being tied to the business and becoming a prisoner of it. Like, is that a fair assumption to make?
I don't know. It's a really interesting way to look at it. Here's the thing for me. So to paraphrase the Jeff Bezos, nobody wants to pay more for it or get it slower. I'm never going to sit on my deathbed and think, I wish I had spent more time in my inbox. I wish I had spent more time on email. I wish I had spent more time trying to find templates and figure out my checklist. Like it's never going to occur to me that way. I would like to think nobody is going to feel the opposite of that. So, but it's a question of how short-sighted you want to be. Because, it's a luxury being able to think long-term. If you are starving, like you can't do a 5-year plan and you should not do a 5-year plan. So the ability for me to think here long-term, like on my deathbed and work backwards is a luxury built from probably thinking long-term as I could. But I definitely think that there are people that somewhere along the way, don't want to create that system, but I don't know if that's I don't know what the difference of opinion is. I don't know if it's fear. I don't know if it's lack of knowledge. I don't know if it's hubris. I don't know what it is.
Maybe a combination of many factors for some. What would you say if, you had to give one piece of advice? Because a lot of times, we go to trade shows, we go to, various legal tech conferences or you name it, and you learn a ton and you come back to your office and ultimately what you have is 10 pages of notes and you wind up implementing nothing. All right. So if there was one thing from the email management perspective that you could give an attorney who's looking to really take the reins and take control over their inbox? What would that be for something they could do to start today?
So not what to do about the 10 pages of notes, but what to do about your email.
Well, that'll be the second episode we have to put out. But
So look, here's the thing. We live in the most ridiculous time possible. Like if you go back 500 years, there were like Japan was unified based upon a battle involving like 1,500 people. I can tweet something stupid or post on LinkedIn and have 10 to 1,000 times that number of people interact with my thing. It is wild to me. So from the standpoint of email management, like how can you use a similar concept for your email? So when it comes time for me to make my email rules, that's content. I put it out as a newsletter. I sell it as an ebook. I don't know, as a digital download document. I coach clients through making it, the separate for them there for themselves. I've got videos for internal training. We cut that into clips for social media. Like you can build these things in a way that helps you grow your reach, that helps you get exposure, that helps you generate cases, that helps you train 20 people at the same time it took you to train one. Like, so you're not doing this over and over again. Figure out what you want and then figure out how to make your want live forever somewhere.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Create perpetual value, right? And that's the whole concept of creating on-demand content anyway, right? Because you're meeting your prospective clients or colleagues at a time where it's most convenient for them. But so I got to, in order.
Well, wait, hold on. But not just externally. Like, so put it in Tetra, put it in Trainual, put it in internal SOPs. So this way you hire a new assistant, you bring on a new paralegal. You don't have to then retrain them from scratch. You can say, hey, watch these, 15 videos and then ask me what questions there are. So it goes in both directions.
I would agree. So mine's going to be twofold. I've got to say, because I'm coming from the tech perspective, I'm going to drop you with two things. One, use dictation. Now, I know a lot of lawyers are familiar with Dragon. Like that was kind of the predecessor. Most people don't know that dictation is built into both Microsoft and the iOS, Mac OS interface. It's built in. So on Windows, I believe it's you press the Windows H key. In Mac OS, you have to go into the settings and enable voice dictation. What that'll do is when you're creating emails, you can kind of supercharge this whole Mail Maestro thing I told you about before. Because when you're creating your prompts on how you want to modify emails, you can use your voice, right? And you can just speak in plain English. You don't have to worry about creating a polished, refined output. That's what the tools will do. You just get your basic points down, click submit, and it'll create that right there in Outlook for you. So that would be my tip to something you can do right away. Use more voice dictation. It's a natural way to communicate. We do it all day, every day. It just helps to get things done a little quicker. And a bonus, I also have, if anyone's interested, if you are interested in getting the tool, again, it's not something I'm affiliated with, but I do have a discount code if anyone would like to use it. It's Paragon Tech IT 10. Use that code, you get 10% off. And again, we do get a small commission off of that, but the main thing, it's, the tool it's $15 a month. So nothing crazy, but the main thing is just to help you get in there.
$13.50 if you're smart enough to use Jay's code.
That's it. Well, and that's why we have the big lawyer brain here. We got to, solve these big problems. So, all right. Well, I think that wraps it up. Yeah, I think that wraps it up for us today. So maybe we'll have to get together, do another one of these on another topic that people are interested in. So maybe we'll put out a comment. We'll put out a poll on LinkedIn and see what kind of topics that other lawyers are interested in learning about. And we can kind of give some perspective from our various, vistas on the things that we see and what's effective.
Sounds good, man.
Later.